Just when you thought the chaos at the Washington Post was slowly dwindling, we have another shakeup on our hands. That's right. Brian Stelter reports that Washington Post columnist Jennifer Rubin is leaving the declining newspaper.
Rubin blasted billionaire owners of media companies, including Jeff Bezos, the owner of the Washington Post, telling CNN that she feared the Post was going from bad to worse. They have undercut the values central to the Post mission, and that of all journalism, integrity, courage, and independence. I cannot justify remaining at the Post. She continued, Jeff Bezos and his cronies accommodate and enable the most acute threat to American democracy, Donald Trump, at a time when a vibrant, free press is more essential than ever to our democracy's survival and capacity to thrive.
Rubin gave a pretty clear signal during her podcast last week that things weren't working out with WAPO. Here she is snubbing her own former company.
And there are good publications out there. I would point to the Philadelphia Inquirer. I would point to the Atlantic. I would point to the folks at the Bulwark. There are many good sources of information and expertise. There are also think tanks like Brookings, for example, which has all sorts of public papers, public discussions, experts. And these are the sources you're going to have to seek out in order to keep yourself informed and bat down the disinformation.
Jennifer Rubin is not a popular figure in some corners of social media, and she was relentlessly mocked for what's about to happen. Journalist Glenn Greenwald wrote, genuinely hilarious that Jen Rubin and Norm Eisen, two of the most banal people in media, are calling their new anti-Trump Substack page The Contrarian. Neither has ever expressed a single idea that's not prevailing wisdom in corporate media and establishment DC. Conservative columnist Carol Markowitz piled on, writing, first of all, every single eye roll, rather than anti-Trump, the founders described their venture as pro-democracy. But second, Jen Rubin as editor-in-chief, give that 6 months. She's abrasive and nasty. One thing to write a column with that personality, another to manage people. Washington Examiner editor Nick Claremont tweeted, news, this is satire, I have resigned, been fired from my job taking money for years from someone I now claim it is immoral to take money from. I'm starting a media company exactly like several other media companies. Our value add is that we think Trump is bad. Subscribe to the derangement.
Author of Stop the Press's newsletter, Mark Jacob, commended Rubin on Blue Sky, writing, Jen Rubin, a strong pro-democratic voice, is leaving the Washington Post and starting something called The Contrarian. Best of luck to Jen. Jeff Bezos does not deserve her.
So the idea that this is contrarian, I agree with Glenn Greenwald. You know, Jennifer Rubin is someone who was controversial at first when she joined the Washington Post because she's a conservative columnist. That's how she was billed. I think in many ways she didn't have a lot of things that were particularly conservative to say. She was like very anti-Mitt Romney, and then she was propagandistically pro-Mitt Romney. But ever since Trump came on the scene, she's just been relentlessly anti-Trump, negative toward Trump. How can your token conservative columnist be someone who hates Trump so viscerally? Just increasingly doesn't make sense, because if you're if you don't like Trump, you're just like not a conservative anymore. Like, whether you like Trump is what defines what a conservative really is. Now, mainstream news outlets hate that because they're left-leaning or progressive-leaning, and their idea of a Republican is someone who also hates Trump. Jennifer Rubin was the avatar of that. And now she's going to be joining something called The Contrarian. It's not contrarian at all to be a Republican commentator at a newspaper who hates Trump. That is like the least contrarian thing you could possibly be. That describes every Republican newspaper op-ed writer in the country.
I just love how you cannot hide your glee at this last shakeup that's happening at the Washington Post. I find it highly entertaining personally.
Good.
I mean, I think the big headline here really is about what's going on at the Washington Post. And I don't think anybody who's been paying attention since right around when they decided to pull their editorial board's endorsement of a presidential candidate or the other, nobody's surprised to see that this mass exodus is happening. There have been other really prominent names that are rumored to be taking calls and considering taking other jobs, including Phil Rucker, who's been there since he was literally an intern, Roz Helderman and others. And I think if you look at the numbers, the Washington Post has been having some significant trouble. I mean, this all started during the first Trump administration, but even in the last few weeks, I saw some information that showed that their ad revenue, for example, has dropped $20 million one year over the other. So there are some challenges that are occurring there. And I mean, whether you take this moment to flee because you're mad about the incoming president, or you do it because you see that there's some troubles, I mean,
it's a bad environment for legacy media, even apart from the political situation. It's harder for a lot of these large media organizations to continue to be profitable, or to even attempt to be profitable with legacy costs for people who've been there a long time, with the fragmentation of the media ecosystem allowing for a lot of dissent and debate. People who served as the guardians of what you were allowed to discuss now have found themselves no longer able to enforce that line. I think the last thing the world needs is an additional media outlet, particularly an additional anti-Trump media outlet. So I'm not sure what a profitable venture this would be. I mean, isn't this market already cornered by, in fact, the publication she was mentioning? The Bulwark is like for former Republicans who hate Trump. Like, there already is such a thing. I don't know what, and it just speaks to what I would say is the ideological bankruptcy of some of these people, that thinking this is truly their attitude. And tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you agree with it, like failure to use enough nasty language to describe Trump is why Democrats didn't win. Like, I think that is sincerely Jennifer Rubin's belief, that like people were, newspapers, mainstream media was afraid to call Trump Hitler and fascist enough, and if we'd only done even more of that, we would have stopped him from being reelected. I think that's her view, and I don't think it's accurate.
Well, I can't speak for Jennifer Rubin's view. I personally don't think
you seem
that
like
you
a far less unhinged person.
Well, I think that you should not be calling anybody Hitler who's not Hitler. I mean, that's just bottom line for me. But I do think your point, Robby, about the proliferation of different types of outlets is a phenomenon that we're witnessing increasingly, and some of them are going to be more successful than others. I mean, remember that on the floor at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, there was all this consternation over the content creators, these individuals who have their own platforms, whether it's through TikTok or some of these other avenues for getting your voice out into the world. They had front row seats to all of the action. And I think that's both bothering legacy media, but also inspiring others, whether you like it or not, to start their own version of that.
Well, I will miss Jennifer Rubin's excited writing at the Washington Post, but there'll be other places to get it. We should talk about, because you admitted off screen to me that you're a fan of The Lord of the Rings. Which
we can talk all day about
our viewers know that I am a fan of that and of all basically nerd topics. One behind-the-scenes reasons why I think Jeff Bezos has become less hostile to Trump, or at least less willing to put up with like liberals running everything at his paper, Jennifer Rubin type people, is his dissatisfaction with what they did with the Lord of the Rings adaptation. By they, I'm meaning like left of center people. I think he doesn't like how it turned out. It's a whole conspiracy, and he's like, they screwed it up, and now I'm mad at liberals. I think that's my theory.
I don't know where to go with that, Robby, as much as I love the series.
We'll just leave it there. More Rising coming up next.